R.K Medicos once again. In this section, we are going to discuss about the introduction of nervous system, and the introduction of nervous system application is basically in our neuroanatomy, how they classified. The classification of neuroanatomy is also we are going to discuss here, and their application is also in the basically in pharmacology. In pharmacology, we are going to discuss about the autonomic nervous system drugs, that is the sympathetic drugs or the parasympathetic drugs, and later on we are going to discuss about the central nervous system drugs, how they act. Before we are going to discuss all these about or the neuroanatomy or the neurophysiology, we have to know the classification of nervous system, how they are going to classify it, and what are the parts of central nervous system is including inside it. So before we are going to discuss the neuroanatomy or the pharmacology or the neurophysiology, we are going to discuss about the neuroanatomy of nervous, introduction of nervous system basically, in which we can see first there is the, suppose that this is the nervous system here, and the nervous system is gets classified into two terms. Basically the first one we can see here, CNS or the central nervous system, central nervous system, and the second one is called as peripheral nervous system. Or this CNS, this central nervous system is called as CNS, and the peripheral nervous system is called as PNS. As we know from the initial, these are the simple terms, you know these things, but I want to simple revision here. The central nervous system is divided into two parts. On the basis of their location, where these organs are located and what are included inside the central nervous system, we are going to discuss it. Basically in the central nervous system, there are the mainly having two parts. The first one is brain, and the second one is a spinal cord. The brain and spinal cord are the two most important part of our central nervous system. They're regulating all the activities of our body through them, the central nervous system. They may be regulated by the brain or they're regulated by the spinal cord basically. These are the two regions of the central nervous system which are regulating all the activities of our body through the central nervous system. In next point we are going to discuss here what are the peripheral nervous system and how they control the activity. Suppose that the nervous system are supplying their impulses, we can also say like that the central nervous system is the director and controller of our body. It is controlling all the activities of our body, and this sending impulses like this. Suppose that the central nervous system in which this sending impulses to the PNS, they're sending impulses to the PNS like this way, and the peripheral nervous system, and again the peripheral nervous system is also sending the impulses in same way. The peripheral, we are going to see the central nervous system sending impulses to the peripheral nervous system, and peripheral nervous system again transferring information to the peripheral nervous system by the central nervous system. We are going to see what are the main parts of the peripheral nervous system. As you know from the initial, the central nervous system is including only two parts, brain and spinal cord. What happened to the peripheral nervous system? The peripheral nervous system is basically divided into two parts. We can see here. The one is called as the sensory PNS, and they are also called as the sensory PNS or afferent division. Next we can see there is a motor PNS, or they are called as efferent division. What does it mean? The peripheral nervous system is basically having two parts. The first one is called as sensory. They carry the sensory impulses and transmitted the travel to the central nervous system, and the motor PNS is carrying also impulses, but they are regulating the activity by them. And we can see the motor and sensory, and what are the components, what are the several components of the peripheral nervous system. What are the components? What are the main parts of the peripheral nervous system. They are basically the plexus. We can see the nerve, ganglion, or we can also see there is the enteric plexus. Basically in the digestive system, the enteric plexus are located, and next one, the sensory receptors. These all are the components of our what, the peripheral nervous system. And after that we can see the sensory PNS or the afferent division, or the motor PNS or the efferent division. These are the basically two classifications of our peripheral nervous system. We can see in the above picture, here is the central nervous system. There is having two parts, brain and spinal cord, and here is the PNS, that is peripheral nervous system. They are having components. There is a nerve, ganglion, and the enteric plexus, and the sensory receptors are located here. And there are basically two types, the first one and the second one. Here is the sensory PNS or the afferent PNS, and the motor PNS or the efferent PNS. After that we are going to classify the sensory PNS or the afferent PNS into two parts, a spatial senses and the general senses. We can see here we are going to classify this sensory PNS into two parts. A spatial sensation and general sensation. And what are the spatial senses, do you know? We can say the spatial senses are like vision, hearing, olfactory, we can say like the taste and the equilibrium. These all are the spatial senses. Now next one we are going to see the general sensation. We can come again to our diagram. We can see the general sensation. They are located generally in our body outside. They are basically, we can see the somatic sensation and the visceral sensation. These are classified again into two parts. They are the general sensation are classified into the somatic and visceral. Somatic sensation and the visceral sensation. Somatic sensation basically located on outside the body somatically, and visceral is located inside. They are the deep parts of body. They are present in the deep part of our body. These are basically the parts of our visceral sensation. We can see in the somatic sensation the several examples here. Superficial part of our body, superficial part of our body, they are somatically located. They are the superficially located in our body. Next one we can see there is a locomotor system. All the types of locomotor system are inside the somatic sensation. Next one we can see there is the skin. Skin is also, we can see from the outside, that the somatic location. Or the locomotor system, we can see there is a joint and muscles. They are present in the locomotor system. They are helpful into the movement. So they are the part of locomotor system, and they are somatic part of our body. The visceral sensation or the visceral deep or the visceral sensation is occurs from the inside our body. Suppose that we can see there is a pain, is the dull pain or the distension of our vision, or we can say like that, what are the parts of body it gets distended from the digestive system or the digestive tract, that the distension of viscera or the visceral organs it gets distended in these parts. Basically we are going to see the nervous system is having two parts, central and peripheral. The peripheral is divided into sensory and motor, and we are now discussing about the sensory PNS or the afferent division, in which the spatial and general senses. The spatial is basically for the spatial parts of our body, the spatial sense organs like the hearing, olfactory, taste, and the equilibrium maintaining. For the general sensation we are classifying again into two, that is the somatic sensation or the visceral sensation. Somatic for all the peripheral region parts of our body, they are the somatically located. Superficial part of body, locomotor system, that is joint and muscles located, and the screen is inside the somatic sensation. Once again, in the visceral sensation, we are going to basically discuss about the dull part of our body, the dull pain, or the, we can also say, the visceral part of our digestive tract, or the different parts of our abdominal region, they gets distended. These are all are located into the classification of the visceral sensation, or the different parts of our body. We can see next one is the motor PNS, or the efferent division. We are going to classify here the motor PNS. Motor PNS, or it is also called as the efferent PNS. This is classified it basically into the two parts. The one of them is called as the somatic nervous system, and another one is called as the autonomic nervous system, is also called as ANS, or this one is called as SNS. ANS and SNS. The ANS is the autonomic nervous system and SNS is the somatic nervous system. Further, the somatic nervous system is included. What are the parts of somatic nervous system is include? There is including the somatic control of our body. And what are the somatic control? That is our skeletal muscles, and we can say like this, they are also called as the voluntary control of our body, because the somatic are the basically part of our the joint or the movements, or they are the muscles location, they are basically related with the joints. So we want to move our body, it's basically denoted by the which nervous system? Somatic nervous system, and they're regulated by it, somatic voluntary control. And next point we can see the conduct impulses. It conduct impulses from the CNS to skeletal muscles. This somatic nervous system is conducting impulses from the central nervous system to the skeletal muscles. They are the somatic nervous system, and they are also called as the voluntary motor system, because it is controlled by our voluntary or the willpower. That is the voluntary nervous system. Next one, the autonomic nervous system is also called as the involuntary. It is called as the involuntary nervous system. The autonomic one is the involuntary nervous system. Further, this autonomic nervous system is classified into three parts. We can see here the autonomic nervous system or the involuntary nervous system is classified into three parts. That one is, the first one is sympathetic nervous system, or the parasympathetic nervous system, and the enteric nervous system. That is called as SNS, sympathetic nervous system, PSNS, parasympathetic nervous system, and here is ENS, enteric nervous system. The enteric nervous system is basically located in our digestive tracts. They are present in digestive organs. And next one we can also see they are present in our digestive tract. In the sympathetic nervous system, they are basically located in our smooth muscles or the cardiac muscles, and they are present in our glands. And the sympathetic nervous system is located in our, they are secreted their neurotransmitters in the fear, fight, flight, 3F, fear, fight and flight. Next one we can also see they are related with sympathy. When the person is having anything happens, due to sympathetic activity or the sympathy or the emotional behavior, then the sympathetic nervous system is working. Sympathetic, parasympathetic and enteric nervous system, these all are the part of our autonomic nervous system, and this autonomic nervous system or the somatic nervous system, they are the parts of motor peripheral nervous system. And motor peripheral nervous system, we can see here, it is the part of PNS or the peripheral nervous system. Now we can see the movement of information from where to where. The movement of information from all the sensory impulses, general or somatic, they are moving through the PNS to the central nervous system. All the impulses from there, the sensory impulses, they are moving from the sensory PNS or the afferent PNS. They are moving their information from the PNS to the central nervous system. But from the central nervous system, these impulses are coming to the PNS and they are moving further towards the motor impulses, and they moving towards the here, from motor impulses to moving to the autonomic nervous system, or they also moving to the somatic nervous system. And in somatic nervous system, they supply to the voluntary and skeletal muscles, and in this they supply to the all these three organs or the all these three nervous system parts, and they supply to this sympathetic region. They are basically in the fear, fight, flight or the sympathetic case, or in the smooth muscles, cardiac muscles or the glands, the digestive tract or the digestive gland. So these all are summarized in this table. We can see here basically the brain and spinal cord are the central nervous system part. The sensory is divided into spatial senses and the general senses. The spatial senses are the vision, olfaction, taste, hearing and equilibrium, and the general sensations are included somatic and visceral. The somatic, the superficial part of the body, they are the locomotor system or the skin, and in the visceral part there is a dull pain or the distensions of the any region of our viscera. Viscera means there is a visceral part of our digestive tract basically. And in the motor PNS, they are classified into two parts. There is a somatic or voluntary or the autonomic or involuntary nervous system, and this somatic nervous system includes the voluntary control or the skeletal muscle control from the CNS. And this autonomic nervous system is classified into sympathetic, parasympathetic and the enteric nervous system. The sympathetic nervous systems include the fear, fight, flight or the sympathy related, and the parasympathetic related with the smooth muscles, cardiac muscles and the glands, and the enteric nervous system with the digestive glands or the digestive organs and the digestive tract. So these all are the classification of the central nervous system. We have to memorize it at a glance. We can see here it's very important, because before we don't know the classification, how the central nervous system is working, how the information is transferred. Here we can see from the central nervous system the information is moving and reaching to the PNS, or which PNS? Motor PNS. Because the any information from in our body, the sensory information is retained. The sensory information is taken up by the nervous system through the spinal cord to the brain, and motor impulses are generated by the central nervous system and they sending down by the descending pathway or the motor pathway, and they coming again from the spinal cord out in our peripheral region, that is the stomach or in the different parts of our body, in the hands, upper limbs or the lower limbs. These all are the motor impulses. The motor impulses are coming by the motor PNS, motor peripheral nervous system, and all the sensory PNS or the sensory peripheral nervous system, they transmitting the sensory impulses to the brain and the spinal cord, because it is the central or the controller of our body. They're controlling all the electrical impulses, they're controlling all the electrical activity in our bodies. And this PNS is having two parts, basically the sensory and motor. That the sensory one is moving like this. They're reaching to the sensory nervous system or the central nervous system, and they coming. Motor one is going to all the motor region, sympathetic, parasympathetic, enteric or the somatic or the involuntary or voluntary region. So this is all about the discussion of the introduction of central nervous system. Later on in part, we are going to discuss by one. In pharmacology, we are basically discussing the sympathetic and parasympathetic action. In the sympathetic, we are going to discussing about the sympathetic system drugs, sympatholytic or the sympathomimetic drugs. In parasympathetic, we are discussing the parasympathomimetic or the parasympatholytic drugs, how they act and where they are located in our body. We are going to discuss in detail about this autonomic nervous system here in the pharmacology. And in the neuroanatomy or the neurophysiology, we are seeing one by one what are the spatial senses, where their receptors are located. So for now, that's all. See you in next video about the pharmacology about autonomic nervous system in the sympathetic or parasympathetic, or the neuroanatomy or the neurophysiology. We discuss everything about it. So thank you, all the best from my side. Take care.